Hey, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. Coming up on the show today, homeowners in Oklahoma are suing State Farm, saying that the company has a secret scheme to deny coverage. Up first, though, our top story today. On day 13 of the Iran war, U.S. strikes in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz continue to escalate. And lawmakers have questions about how much artificial intelligence is playing a role in decisions about where the U.S. is choosing to strike. We know that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has been working to put AI at the heart of American combat operations. So what kind of a role is it playing? And are humans still in the loop? I want to bring in Jared Perlo for more on this. He covers artificial intelligence for NBC News here. Hey, Jared.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Great to see you. So U.S. Central Command posted an update about Operation Epic Fury on their X account on Wednesday. And I want to play a bit of what Admiral Brad Cooper said about the use of AI in Iran.
These systems help us sift through vast amounts of data in seconds, so our leaders can cut through the noise and make smarter decisions faster than the enemy can react. Humans will always make final decisions on what to shoot and what not to shoot, and when to shoot. But advanced AI tools can turn processes that used to take hours and sometimes even days into seconds.
So there's a couple of things that stand out to me in that statement that I want you to help us understand here, right? He says, quote unquote, sifting through data. Mm-hmm. He says cutting through the noise. But at the end of the day, the person that is actually pulling the literal and figurative trigger is a human, making the last and final decision. Walk us through exactly what we know about how AI, the intricacies of how AI is being used in this war.
Absolutely. So I think it's very important to note right off the bat that AI is playing a central role in the current war in Iran in various ways. But I think that point that the Admiral made right at the end is that AI is not ultimately pulling the trigger. So we shouldn't be thinking about lethal autonomous weapons or killer robots. That's not how AI is being used here. Instead, we can think about how AI's powers to sift through or crunch massive amounts of data, huge data sets, could empower soldiers, analysts to basically make targeting decisions, operational decisions that otherwise would have taken much longer or would have otherwise been impossible. So you can kind of think about it like a military application of maybe how people use ChatGPT or tools like Copilot, some sort of generative AI tool, even in their own work. So say I have some huge spreadsheet and I just want to figure out like what the trends in that spreadsheet are over time. I can now ask with generative AI, I can use a tool and basically say, what's going on in this spreadsheet? Show me the different trends. The same thing is basically happening in this military context. But you can think about, instead of one spreadsheet, think about like 20 million different data sources, different sensors, either satellites, either audio feeds, either talking about like surveillance cameras trained on different parts of different buildings in Tehran, for example. So if you can centralize and combine all those different data feeds into one kind of console, one data center, and then use AI to basically ask what different trends are going on in those different images, then you can really get some insights that you wouldn't be able to otherwise.
So help me understand. For instance, if they were to go in and say, okay, we want to know all of Iran's military bases inside the country, right? Or tell us where it is that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is visiting most from all of the surveillance footage we have throughout Tehran. Are those the sorts of things that they would use AI for?
Exactly, yeah. You can identify different travel patterns. You can basically compare two different images. Say there is an image taken on February 25th and an image taken on March 3rd showing different cars that might be outside of buildings. Or another example is identifying missile launchers, because this hunt for missile launchers has been a central part of the war. So you might be able, with computer vision, a certain type of AI algorithm, to identify a couple missile launchers in one area of the country.
The location of them?
The location of them, yeah. But basically, once you see 5, 10 of these missile launchers, because you have access to all this other satellite data, the feeds that would just take hours, days, years for human analysts to comb through, you can now use AI to say, where do you see similar images? Where do you see similar objects that look like missile launchers throughout the rest of the country? And then the AI systems can basically flag those to the human analysts, the human operators, and say, okay, well, we identified 10 missile launchers in the east, but here are 25 missile launchers in the west that you hadn't previously identified.
So I want to talk about something that we have been reporting on since, the early days of this war, and that was on about a strike That was about a strike on a school in Manob. It killed 170 people, many of which were children. The U.S. military has said that it is still investigating that strike, but preliminary information shows that outdated intelligence may have been to blame for picking that target. As we all know, at this point, the school actually used to be part of a nearby military compound. What do we know about whether or not AI actually informed the targeting of that school?
So I would say we don't know a lot about exactly how AI was used in this case. Actually, just this morning, we saw that over 100 Democratic representatives in Congress sent a letter to the Defense Department asking that specific question. Was it used in the targeting of this school? Was it responsible for the decision to target? Did a human ultimately make the targeting decision itself? But I want to reiterate that AI is now in almost every part of as I've heard from my sources, of how the Pentagon is fighting this war. I would say it's almost seen as standard operating procedure, that if you're not using AI in some way to turbocharge your work, then you might not be fulfilling the mission as best you could. So now this point of outdated data, I think, is critical. So AI systems, if you're using outdated data, the database that's going into this AI model, then it's not unreasonable to think that the AI model would flag this building as being part of a compound that's part of the Navy base. I think it's important to highlight, though, at the same time, that the ultimate decision to target the base, that same decision might have been taken by a human operator without AI as well. So we saw this in the 1999 bombing of the Chinese embassy by the U.S. This was a mistake based on outdated data. So we've seen this sort of outdated data informing erroneous strikes before. I think the key thing to pay attention to is the trend of whether this increased reliance on AI, this increased utilization of AI, causes
more human error.
Exactly, more human error, more incorrect strikes.
Members of Congress, as you mentioned, are calling for more guardrails, right, when it comes to the use of AI. What are they calling for, and how likely is it that they could get some guardrails here in place for the use of AI, especially in wartime?
I think it's a fascinating question, and I think it's a very live matter, and we're frankly going to see as this plays out in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months. I would say if you look at the past 6 months, the past year, very few people on Capitol Hill were really interested in AI, specifically AI in military context. That's totally changed, I would say, in the past month, in the past 3 months. So what they're calling for is, I think, primarily more transparency in exactly how the military is using AI. As I said, there are a lot of just concrete details we don't know, and a lot of this is because, you know, they're classified confidential operations that are happening. But the members of Congress are saying we want to know exactly how the Pentagon, the Defense Department, is using AI. There are so many different programs now that are using AI well beyond the targeting, the logistics stuff that we talked about before. So they're calling for more transparency, and then they really want to make sure that a human is always making the ultimate decision, especially for lethal strikes. The technical term there is that a human is in the loop. So you're not having a military analyst totally delegating the responsibility to an AI system. Instead, a human is overseeing what the AI is doing, the human to whatever extent.
Overseeing, though, and I think that's a really key point there, right? Because the human is still dependent on what the AI systems are compiling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, this is just an ongoing issue. And a lot of the people that I talk to who are in the Pentagon or used to be in the Pentagon, they say that AI is just advancing so quickly, and we don't know exactly how these systems work. So,
and yet they are using it in wartime.
They are using it in wartime. And I think, honestly, building the plane as we fly it, trying to understand exactly how these models should be used in the human versus AI, basically the interaction, what that should look like in real time. I would also stress, though, that a lot of the defense officials I've talked to understand to some extent the limitations of this technology. We heard from the Admiral that they want humans involved in making the ultimate decision. But I think, frankly, I'm confused, and I think a lot of the people I talk to are confused. If you don't understand how a model gets from an input to an output, you don't understand the reasoning that's actually going on inside this AI system. How can you fully trust it to be using the latest information and not be hallucinating? And I think that's just an unanswered and open question.
And how do they even find the human who's going to oversee what the AI systems are doing?
So this is, again, it's an ongoing issue. Yesterday, there was news that broke that the Pentagon is investing millions of dollars more in training analysts. And there's all sorts of these training logistics exercises to get people who have never used these AI systems before. They've been conducting warfare. They've been serving in the military without touching these AI tools. They're trying to basically onboard them to this new AI-assisted paradigm that we're in. Pete Hegseth at the beginning of January said that he's going to try to remold the Pentagon into an AI-first warfighting force. What does that mean for the hundreds of thousands of service members who before haven't been using AI? I don't really know. I think, again, we're kind of making it up as we go.
Yeah.
And depending on who you talk to, there's different levels of caution involved.
Jared Perlo, thank you.
Thanks so much.
And the effects of the Iran war are now being felt stateside. A hacker group linked to Iran has claimed responsibility for a cyber attack on the medical technology company Stryker. It is unclear how exactly the attack was carried out, but an employee told NBC News that work-issued phones stopped working, bringing work and communications to a standstill. This week, tornadoes tore through Illinois and Indiana. Homes collapsed, hail the size of golf balls. One man looked up and saw the sky where his kitchen used to be. 62 million people still in the danger zone. When the storm passes, you call your insurance company. State Farm has spent decades telling you they're your good neighbor, that when it matters most, State Farm is there. But for more than 600 Oklahoma homeowners, that promise is now being put to the test. They are suing State Farm, saying that the insurance company cheated homeowners out of reimbursements, and now the state is getting involved. I want to bring in NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett, who's been talking to people involved in these lawsuits. Hi, Laura.
Hey, good to be with you.
This is a really interesting story. So you got hundreds of families in Oklahoma who are suing State Farm because they were denied coverage. What is going on here? Give us the backstory.
So we met Billy Hirsch. He's a police officer outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He lives on a sweet little cul-de-sac with his wife, Lacey, and his 5-year-old son. And he brought his first home during COVID. They were so excited to be homeowners.
Yeah.
A storm hits, and Billy would tell you, look, I live in Oklahoma. Storm is and hail and wind. That's just part of living in the state. Storm hits in 2023. He does not notice that there is a hole in his roof, but some tree trimmers were up, just doing some regular maintenance. And the tree trimmer tells him, hey, Billy, you got a hole in your roof.
This is after the storm.
After the storm. Billy says, okay. He gets some contractors to come look at it. Both contractors say you need a full roof replacement. State Farm says, no, the roof is in fair condition. That was sort of his first signal that this is going to be tough. And I asked him, did you think this was going to be a fight right away? And he would say, I had no idea. 8 months later, another hailstorm hits, like hail the size of golf balls.
And roof still hasn't been fixed.
Roof hasn't been fixed because they said it was in fair condition. Second storm comes, more damage. State Farm takes a look at it, and they acknowledge the damage, but they say it's, quote, minor. And this is when he knew, okay, we're going to have a real fight on our hands. And Billy would say he did what he was supposed to do.
Makes you feel like a sucker. Like I was foolish to have thought that the insurance company would hold up their end of the bargain.
He appealed. He went through all of the process that you're supposed to do, and he still wasn't going to get reimbursed. But he's got a 5-year-old, okay, right? He's got this young family. And so they say, I think we're going to have to get this roof fixed ourselves. Getting a roof fixed, I did not realize this. I don't have a home.
It's expensive.
Getting a roof fixed, yes, is crazy expensive.
My mom just had to get her roof replaced.
It's to the tune of $22,000, right? This is a modest family. He's a police officer. They don't have $22,000 laying around in cash.
We had to borrow against the equity in our house.
You had to borrow against the equity in your house to get your roof replaced.
Yeah. It forced us to reevaluate our financial planning by decades.
Now, State Farm would say they have done nothing wrong, right? They deny all of the allegations in this lawsuit, but then we found out Billy is not the only one. Right? There are hundreds, literally hundreds of other families that are now in the same position. And after this piece aired on Nightly, Yaz, I have had more people reach out to me than any story I have ever done at NBC News.
Wow.
My inbox right now is flooded with people in Texas, in Florida, in Ohio, telling me this is the same situation I have had. This exact same story is my story.
So it turns out that the lawsuit now alleges that State Farm developed this quote unquote hail focus initiative.
Yeah.
Right? And the idea was essentially narrowing the definition of hail damage to reduce the amount of payouts.
Yes.
To reduce the amount of money that State Farm actually had to pay. How were they able to do this? Why did they do this now? And do we even know how much money they were paying out before this initiative was put into place?
No.
Okay.
And part of why we don't know is because it turns out State Farm has been settling with families. And so there's like 125 families, we think at least, maybe more, but at least those that have settled. And those confidential
And
settlements.
let me stop you for a second, by the way. So if you are State Farm Insurance and you're settling with families, that means you know that you are likely going to be held liable in a court of law. So you're going to settle outside of court.
Maybe you think you will, maybe you think you won't, but you hedge your risk, and so
Right.
you settle because it's not worth the risk of going through it,
yeah,
right? So
right.
they wouldn't say that it was an admission of liability,
Okay.
but what we have found is at least some of those families have settled, and we don't know what, if anything, they've admitted, but the Attorney General of the state has now taken notice of this. And I sat down with him, his name is Gentner Drummond, and he told me that it's his job as the law enforcement officer of the state and one who enforces consumer protection laws to look at this on a holistic level on behalf of all Oklahomans. And so he's trying to get right now discovery into those settlements to figure out what's going on. And he did not hold back when talking about what he has found already.
There may be a scheme inside of State Farm's leadership to intentionally defraud Oklahomans. And if that can be proven, that RICO will cross into the criminal world.
He's only been involved since late last year when he got the right to actually intervene in the lawsuit. A state court said he could intervene.
And does he feel as if there is someone specifically to point to at State Farm who is kind of pulling the lever on these decisions and or finding the company as a whole culpable?
If he hasn't told me that. He
Yeah.
hasn't pointed the finger at any one executive or anything like that. And I'm not sure yet he knows that because he's still in the beginning of his investigation and is still fighting it out in court because State Farm, maybe not that surprisingly, is fighting having the AG involved at all. The State Farm is saying the Attorney General doesn't belong here at all. This is just a sort of a one-off dispute with a homeowner. What does the AG have to do with this? And so they're actually fighting in court right now because the AG is trying to stay involved.
So I want to note, though, State Farm has declined NBC News' request for an interview, but in legal filings, they denied any wrongdoing, as you mentioned earlier. And in a statement to us, the company said that, quote, over the past 2 years, State Farm has paid more than $1 billion to Oklahoma customers for wind and hail damage to their homes and property. Do you have any idea if that $1 billion includes those settlements as well?
We don't know.
What I think is so interesting about this story, Laura, is yes, we are telling it from the perspective of this one family that you spoke to in the state of Oklahoma who had this small hole in their roof and had to subsequently get their roof replaced. But we are hearing stories, as you mentioned, like this across the country every time there is a natural disaster. And as we full well know, these natural disasters, these weather events are getting worse and worse by the day, right? The tornadoes, the hail across major parts of the country that we have been seeing most recently. We've had the huge fire out west, the Palisades fire, the Eaton fires in California. We have seen these types of complaints before that insurance companies aren't reimbursing policyholders. What is the solution? What is kind of the way forward when more and more of these types of things are piling up?
I think the only thing that could really be done is for there to be some sort of legislative fix, right? And so state lawmakers.
So guardrails basically in place.
Yeah, because
things that these insurance companies cannot do legally.
because the incentives are too high on behalf of the insurers to try to figure out ways to deny or limit claims. And that's what the Hail Focus Initiative is, right? Realizing, okay, in Oklahoma, there's going to be storms. And so if we decide preemptively, before we even get a claim submitted, to almost like do a pre-denial, then we'll have to pay out less. And unless legislatures, I think, figure out ways to be more active and affirmative in like addressing this, there's no reason for the insurance companies not to do this because they want to be able to pay out as little as possible.
Laura Jarrett, thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, thank you for filling in for me tomorrow so I can take a day off and spend the day with my kids.
Anytime.
All right. That is going to do it for us at Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you heard and you saw, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.